Diving right in today, a story really intensely personal, but it has like global implications too.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about Eunice Paiva, a woman who stood up to Brazil's military dictatorship, and the movie I'm Still Here, that brings her fight to the big screen.
Yeah, and you know what really strikes me is how this story, while it is rooted in a specific time and place, it does really speak to something universal. Like that human cost of authoritarianism.
Yeah.
It's not just some abstract political concept. This is about, lives shattered, families ripped apart, and a society, just gripped by fear.
Totally. And we've got excerpts from a news article that really unpacks the making of the film. The woman behind Eunice's portrayal, the acclaimed Fernanda Torres.
Yeah.
And it's clear that Torres saw this as more than just a role, but what did she mean by calling it a civic duty? Could a film really be a form of activism, against authoritarianism?
That's a great question. Films can be, really powerful reminders of history's lessons. And in this case, I'm Still Here. It shines a light on a dark chapter in Brazil's past. And by doing so, it challenges viewers to confront the potential consequences of unchecked power, wherever they may be.
It makes me think about how history seems to be like rhyming lately. With the attempted coup in 2022 and the rise of figures like Jair Bolsonaro. Torres herself drew parallels between the 1970s dictatorship and, this more recent political climate, didn't she?
She did. And that comparison, it really underscores how the themes of this film are not just confined to the past. It's a cautionary tale, about the fragility of democracy and that we need to always be vigilant, right? Yeah. Always defending it.
Okay, so let's unpack this for a second. We've been talking about the film and its broader implications, but I'm eager to go deeper into Eunice Paiva's story itself,
Yeah.
What can you tell us about her life before the dictatorship, took hold? What kind of woman was she? What led her to become such a powerful symbol of resistance?
So Eunice Paiva's story, it's a testament to the extraordinary strength that ordinary people can find, in the face of extraordinary circumstances, right? Before the dictatorship, she was a wife, a mother, living a, relatively normal life. It was the disappearance of her husband, the politician Eunice Piva, in 1971 that kind of thrust her into the heart of this whole struggle.
I'm struck by the fact that, instead of succumbing to grief and fear, Eunice actually chose to fight back. Was that a common response among those who lost loved ones during the dictatorship?
Well, while a lot of people were, silenced by fear, Eunice's response, though it was exceptional in its tenacity, it really, it exemplifies a spirit of defiance that I think simmered beneath the surface for a lot of Brazilians during that time. It was a time when speaking out carried immense risk. Yet some people, like Eunice, just flat out refused to be silenced.
So how did she navigate that risk? What specific strategies did she use to challenge the regime? To seek information about her husband's disappearance? Did she work alone, or were there networks of resistance supporting her?
Well, from what we know, Eunice took a kind of a multi-pronged approach, right? She was tirelessly seeking information, contacting authorities, engaging with international organizations, and connecting with other families of, the disappeared. These actions, they may seem, small on their own, but they were actually incredibly subversive in a climate where silence was, just expected. But, persistently demanding answers, she chipped away at the regime's kind of facade of control.
It sounds like she understood the power of information. Yeah. Keeping the truth alive, even when those in power just wanted to bury it. That reminds me of the title of the film, I'm Still Here. It's such a powerful statement, not just about her, her physical presence, but about the, enduring presence of memory and truth.
Exactly. Yeah. That title, it really does encapsulate the film's core message that, even when people try to erase history, those voices of the oppressed, the stories of those who were lost, they will continue to resonate.
This brings us to Fernanda Torres, the actress who embodies Eunice on screen.
Right.
And our sources mentioned that she got, an Oscar nomination for her performance, and that she saw this role as a civic duty, but is making a film, even one as impactful as this, truly enough to fulfill that duty?
That's an interesting question. I mean, you could definitely argue that true civic duty requires more, right? Direct action, political engagement, or social activism.
Right.
However, I think it's important to recognize how powerful art can be to awaken consciences, to inspire people to take action.
So Torres, by bringing Eunice's story to life, could be seen as sparking a different kind of activism, one that ignites awareness and empathy as a first step towards change. It's interesting to consider how art can create these, like, ripples that extend far beyond the screen.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that Torres herself isn't just passively participating in this, Our sources mention a controversy surrounding her past appearances in blackface for a comedy sketch, which she has since addressed.
Right. And while we're not here to, delve into the ethics of those past actions, it is important to acknowledge this context. What stands out to you about Torres's response to, this controversy?
What's notable is that she didn't shy away from taking accountability. In her statement, she expressed regret, she acknowledged the harm caused by blackface, and, she signaled a willingness to learn and grow from past mistakes.
That willingness to confront those uncomfortable truths, both, personal and societal, seems to align with the firm's message of challenging silence and confronting injustice.
Right. It does. And it speaks to a larger point about, how complex it is to navigate history and to confront our own biases. Just as, Brazil is grappling with its past, each of us, I think, needs to be willing to examine our own complicity in perpetuating harmful systems.
That's a powerful thought. It seems like both Eunice Paiva's story and Fernanda Torres' journey offer valuable lessons about, the importance of self-reflection and holding ourselves accountable.
Yeah.
But before we, dive deeper into those lessons, I kind of want to shift our focus to the film's impact on like a global scale.
Okay.
I understand that I'm Still Here has been making waves internationally, and it's not every day that a Brazilian film, fully in Portuguese, receives such widespread acclaim, including, Oscar nominations.
You're absolutely right. This level of international recognition it's pretty significant. It speaks to the film's ability to transcend cultural boundaries and connect with audiences on a deeply human level.
I'm curious about what this means for Brazilian cinema, as a whole. Does this success kind of, signal a shift in the global perception of Brazilian films? Could it open doors for more Brazilian stories to reach a wider audience?
That's a really interesting question, and one that Torres herself has even addressed. She believes that the success of I'm Still Here really could attract more investment in Brazilian productions and help showcase the richness and, the diversity of Brazilian storytelling, right, to a global audience.
It reminds me of another Brazilian film that got a lot of international attention, Central Station.
Yeah.
Also directed by Walter Salles, who directed I'm Still Here. Central Station was nominated for an Oscar back in 1999. And interestingly enough, it starred Fernanda Montenegro, Torres' mother, who also plays a role in I'm Still Here as like an older Eunice.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a remarkable family connection, huh?
Yeah, it is quite remarkable, isn't it? It speaks to a legacy of talent and a shared passion for storytelling that seems to run through this family.
Yeah.
And it highlights, the cyclical nature of history, right? Like how the past informs the present and how these personal stories can resonate across generations.
It makes you wonder what Eunice Piva would think of this film, of her story being told on such a large scale. Would she approve of the way it portrays her struggle, her family, her country's turbulent past?
Yeah, that's a question we can't definitively answer, of course, but we can look at at the film's themes, its message of resilience and resistance, and its unflinching portrayal of the human cost of authoritarianism, and you see echoes of Eunice's own fight for truth and justice.
And maybe that's the most powerful legacy of all, right?
Yeah.
To inspire others to continue that fight, to keep those stories alive, and to never let the world forget the importance of speaking truth to power.
Beautifully said. And that, brings us to a point where I think it's time to shift our focus to the film's impact, on viewers. How have audiences responded to I'm Still Here? And what specific elements of the film have, resonated most strongly?
From what I've seen, audiences have really responded to the film with this kind of mix of admiration and heartbreak, but also this renewed sense of urgency.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have praised how unflinchingly it portrays the brutality of the dictatorship.
Right.
But they also highlight, the quiet strength of Eunice's character and how, her struggle is really universal.
It's interesting that you say, quiet strength when talking about Eunice.
Yeah.
It seems like the film doesn't really try to paint her as this larger than life hero, It focuses more on these everyday acts of courage that that really define her resistance.
Right.
Do you think that approach makes her story more relatable, more impactful for viewers?
Oh, absolutely. By focusing on Eunice's ordinary humanity, the film really avoids turning her into some kind of distant mythical figure.
We see her as a wife, as a mother, as a woman grappling with immense grief and fear, but still finding a way to fight back.
Right.
And that makes her courage all the more inspiring because it feels attainable, like something we can all aspire to in our own lives.
Yeah, no, that resonates with me.
Yeah.
It's like this reminder that heroism doesn't always require, these grand gestures, right?
Uh-huh.
It can be found in those like everyday acts of defiance.
Mm-hmm.
Those small choices we make to speak up, to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard.
Exactly. And the film does such a good job of showing how those small acts can have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
How they can really start to chip away at the foundations of oppressive systems.
One of the things that really struck me about the film was how they depicted the psychological impact, of living under a dictatorship.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just about physical violence, right? It was that constant fear, that, mistrust, the sense that, you were always being watched and that if you said the wrong thing, there could be these terrible consequences.
Yeah, you've really hit on a crucial aspect of authoritarianism there, one that's often overlooked, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The real insidiousness of it lies in how it just gets into every part of life.
Yeah.
It creates a climate of self-censorship and paranoia that's just as effective, as outright violence and silencing dissent.
Yeah, and that's where Eunice's story, becomes even more powerful.
Right.
She refused to let fear control her actions. She just kept seeking the truth about her husband's disappearance, even when it meant putting herself at risk.
Her courage is a real testament to the enduring human spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Our capacity to resist even when the odds are completely stacked against us.
And it's this reminder that even in the darkest times, there are always people who dare to speak truth to power, who just refuse to let fear put out that flame of hope.
Exactly. And that brings us to another really important part of this film. Its focus on memory and truth.
Right.
These authoritarian regimes, they often try to rewrite history. They try to erase those inconvenient truths that challenge their legitimacy. But I'm still here. It acts as this powerful counter narrative. Wow. It's a testament to how important it is to remember and honor the victims of oppression.
It seems like the film is making a statement about the power of individual stories to challenge these official narratives.
Right.
To keep the truth alive even when the people in power try to suppress it.
Exactly. The film recognizes that memory itself is a form of resistance, and that by sharing these stories, by just refusing to let them be forgotten, we honor the victims and we challenge those who would seek to erase them from history.
And that's where art becomes so vital.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm still here, have that power, to amplify those voices, to reach people who might never hear these stories otherwise, to spark these conversations that challenge, these dominant narratives.
You're right. And it's not just about looking back at the past either, right? It's about making connections to the present and recognizing, how those same dynamics of power and oppression are still at play, maybe in different forms, but they're still there.
Speaking of connections to the present, one of the things that really hit me about the film was how it kind of subtly critiques the way society often values certain lives, over others.
Yeah.
Eunice's husband, Eunice Paiva, he was a prominent politician.
Right.
And his disappearance, it got a lot of attention. But what about all the other people who were disappeared during the dictatorship? Those people whose stories never made the news.
That's a very perceptive observation. The film does implicitly raise questions about whose stories get told, whose lives are considered important enough to remember,
right,
and whose suffering is just ignored.
Yeah.
It really challenges us to think about the systemic inequalities, the ones that determine whose voices are heard and whose pain is acknowledged.
It's like a reminder that the fight for justice, it has to include everyone, right? Not just the people who fit a certain mold or who have a certain level of, social standing.
Exactly. And that kind of brings us to another important theme that the film explores, the importance of empathy and understanding.
Right.
I'm still here. It doesn't just tell Eunice's story. It invites us to really step into her shoes, right? To feel her pain, her fear, her determination.
I agree. It's a film that asks us to to move past these abstract political debates and connect with the human stories, the ones at the heart of this whole struggle.
You're absolutely right. And by doing that, it challenges us to expand our own capacity for empathy, to recognize that shared humanity that binds us together, even when we have different political views.
Do you think that's part of why the film is so powerful? Like its ability to really make you feel empathy, to create a space where viewers can connect with Eunice's story on this like personal level.
Absolutely. The film's power lies in its ability to bridge that gap between what's personal and what's political, to show how individual lives are shaped by these larger forces, right? And to just remind us that behind every political issue there are real people whose lives are on the line.
It's a reminder that empathy isn't just some nice to have quality. It's crucial for building a more just and compassionate world.
Precisely. And that kind of brings us back to, the question of the film's impact and what it might mean for the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about the film's success, the critical acclaim, and its potential to really elevate Brazilian cinema on the world stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
But beyond all that, beyond those tangible outcomes, what kind of lasting impact do you think I'm still here might have?
I think the film's most enduring legacy, it lies in its ability to spark dialogue, to challenge complacency, and to inspire action. By bringing Eunice Paiva's story to life, the film invites us to confront uncomfortable truths about our own society, to examine our own complicity, in systems of oppression, and to really consider how we can contribute to a more just and equitable world. It's a call to action, isn't it? A reminder that we all have a part to play in protecting democracy, in protecting human rights, and in making sure those who are marginalized, their voices are heard.
Precisely. And it's a reminder that even when things seem impossible, there is always hope. Eunice Paiva's story is a testament to the enduring human spirit, our capacity for resilience, our unwavering pursuit of truth and justice, and our belief in the possibility of a better future.
Her story and the film that brings it to life, it leaves us with this sense of both responsibility and possibility. We're reminded of how fragile our freedoms are, the ever-present threat of authoritarianism,
right?
And the need to always be vigilant, to defend democracy, but we're also reminded of the power of just one person taking action, the courage it takes to speak truth to power, and how even small acts of resistance can really make a difference. Beautifully put. And as we kind of move towards wrapping up our deep dive into Eunice Paiva's story and the film I'm Still Here, I think it's important to take a moment and think about the personal lessons we can take away from this. What really resonates with you, and what insights will you carry with you from this exploration?
For me, it's that power of just not giving up. Eunice Paiva's refusal to back down, even when it felt like she was up against a wall. It's really inspiring.
Yeah.
It makes me think about those times in life when it's easy to get cynical or just feel hopeless.
Right.
Eunice's story, it's like a reminder that even these small acts of resistance, they can make a dent even in these massive systems of power.
It is a really profound insight. It's easy to feel so powerless when you're up against these huge forces.
Yeah.
But Eunice Paiva's story, it shows us that even regular people, they can make a difference just through their persistence and that unwavering commitment to truth and justice.
And it's not always about those big splashy actions or like heroic moments.
Right.
It's about the choices we make every day, right? Yeah. The conversations we have, the way we choose to interact with the world around us. It's about understanding that our actions, no matter how small they might seem, can be part of a bigger movement for change.
Absolutely. And that brings me to another point, collective action.
Right.
While the Eunice Paiva story really shows the power of individual courage, it also shows how important it is to have support,
right?
To have solidarity. She didn't do this alone, She connected with other families who had people disappear. She worked with international organizations. She sought out allies in her quest for justice.
It really underscores that idea that we are stronger together.
Yeah.
amplifying each other's voices, working side by side. That's how we create a more powerful force for change.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about, the role of art in building that sense of collective purpose, right?
Yeah.
I'm Still Here, it's not just a movie.
Right.
It's a conversation starter, it's a catalyst for dialogue, and it reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles for justice and equality.
Exactly. Art, it has this power to connect us, across borders, to foster empathy, to help us understand each other, and to inspire us to work together, toward a shared goal.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Eunice Paiva's story and the film I'm Still Here, I'm left feeling both, hopeful and like a sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
Hope because her story reminds us that even when things are really dark, the human spirit, it can come through.
Yeah.
And responsibility, because it makes us think about our own roles in upholding these systems of power and oppression. And to think about how we can help build a world that's more just and equitable.
Beautifully said. And as we close out here, I just want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
As you move forward, take those lessons from Eunice Paiva's story with you.
Yeah.
Embrace, the power of persistence, how important it is to work together, and the power of empathy and understanding, right, to really change things.
Remember that even when you feel like you're facing something that's just, too big to overcome, there's always hope. And even the smallest actions, they can make a difference.
Never underestimate the power of your own voice, right? To speak truth to power and to help build a world that's more just and compassionate.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.